Satang Prasanga.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to today's session. I pray that all is well with you and your families at this time. So we're moving on to the next sutra, and it goes as follows. Our dreams often are born of or are contaminated with false ego and self-centeredness. Sometimes these contaminations are subtle and unnoticed. We are therefore requested to trust Krishna's discretion and accept His will as best. Are we willing to trust Krishna when what He ordains is different than our desire? Are we willing to offer Him our plans, even those for service? In our practice of Krishna consciousness, we must understand as devotees that this is a process. It's an ongoing process of purity, of purification, of reaching the most perfect state of who we can be. And in that state, we then qualify ourselves to be with Krishna constantly, to serve Krishna constantly, to see Krishna constantly. And the Srimad Bhagavatam discusses the state of consciousness as Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, verse number 26 describes Savai Pumsa Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Radoksaja Ahoitiki Apratihata Yayatma Suprasiddhati. That the highest dharma, paro dharma, the highest level of dharma, religiosity or religion as we call it, is unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service. At that level, one can be completely satisfied at the level of the soul. And the nectar of devotion also starts with a similar concept. Anya bilashita sunyam Jnana karmana vritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhakti ruttama. That the topmost bhakti, devotion, is serving Krishna unmotivatedly, uninterruptedly, as Krishna pleases. So using these powerful verses as a template in our life, as foundational to our spiritual growth, it's essential that we understand that Krishna consciousness is a process. The verse goes on to say, our dreams often are born of or are contaminated with false ego and self-centeredness. Sometimes these contaminations are subtle and unnoticed. We are therefore requested to trust Krishna's direction and accept His will as best. So that's the foundation of what today's sutra is saying. We see when we first start up in devotional service, we don't really know what kind of service to do. There's so many services that's available. So we tend to go with our proclivity, with that which we are good at, and find some kind of niche among the congregation of devotees. And that goes well for a while, until we meet another devotee who kind of doesn't agree with what we're doing, or kind of wants to tell us where to get off. And Diwali starts early. So usually these days you kind of can fit into a lot of services, but at that time when I joined in Cape Town in the early years, whatever was prominent, you had to get into that and learn all the other services as well, but contribute towards the main service. And at that time it was book distribution. So I did that for a few years, and it was difficult. It was beyond your nature a bit, and go out on the streets and distribute books for many hours a day, 8 hours sometimes, every day except Sunday. Saturday was a big Harinam with book distribution. So it was tough, but we did it. And then after a few years I went to Lenasia, and then my service changed. I was learning deity worship there. So that was more within my nature. And then that developed nicely for a few years, but it was also difficult because we were short-staffed, and you'd just be called up at any time. So it had its challenges, but we embraced those challenges and grew from them. So everything starts going well until we become senior devotees. And now, who awarded us that privilege of being senior devotees now, I don't know. But after a very short time, we become now senior devotees. I was telling you all the last time, senior devotee means digestion problem, garland, walk around with garland, and small sikha. So as we're progressing in that, now that we become senior, we change our identity again. First we come with the material concept of who we are, then we learn Vaidhi Bhakti, and then we get a new name, a new identity. So many aspects, our clothing, so many parts of our identity changes. And now when we become senior, again we seem to change that identity again, not realizing many times that the false ego is acting all the way below. The false ego is acting. So have we come to notice the false ego, or have we come to address the false ego? That's very deep parts of who we are. And then the trouble starts, because now there's others who also think that they are senior and that they can tell you, and so there's the false ego starts being addressed now, and nobody likes to address their false ego. So, and as that conflict arises more and more, conflict resolution, we still keep going on that with no solution. The solution is we're not addressing the false ego. And then if we have read enough and heard enough and imbibed the process enough, then usually we can wade this through with the help of other senior devotees. But if we have not, then what the false ego does, it slowly takes us away from the association of devotees. I know better than them. On TV everything is there, on internet, YouTube, and ISKCON Desire Tree, everything is there. I don't need these people. I can then go to another temple. They'll value me more there. So we either start to temple hop from one temple to another, or we gradually move away from devotees. And we go away so far away that Maya has completely pulled us out of the association of devotees. And it's all because of the false ego. So I'm bringing this up so that we can, as students of life and understanding, students of Bhagavad Gita, we can understand that we have to address our false ego at some stage in our lives. Otherwise, we're going to have serious problems as we progress. And it's not easy. We see with Tamal Krishna Maharaj, famous example, there was some conflict with the Radha Damodar party, and then they brought it up to Prabhupada that he's taking all our brahmacharis away and he's leaving the temples empty, and Prabhupada is happy with the results, but because of this conflict, and then he called him one day, and Ramakrishna Maharaj told Prabhupada, all this is going on, better I just go to China. Ooh. Prabhupada said, next morning Prabhupada called him in, and he knew it was coming. And Prabhupada said, yesterday you were talking about China. I think it's a good proposal. And next, Prabhupada, I was just saying so, no, that was a good saying so that you did. It was very good. So, yes, you should go. And he was like really stuck. So if he didn't have that faith in Prabhupada, and if he didn't address that aspect of his nature, it was a big sacrifice to do what he did. We see even in Bhuvaneshwar, just to mention, in Mayapur now, due to Maharaj's efforts in those days in China, we have such a wonderful community of devotees, Chinese devotees here now, wonderful, serious devotees. So just see his efforts at that time paying off now. In Bhuvaneshwar, we had, I forget the Prabhu's name, but he was serving with His Holiness Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And he was serving, Prabhupada wanted him to serve there. And he said, Prabhupada, I'm traveling with you though. He said, no, it's okay, you can serve here. They need some help. He said, Prabhupada, but my tickets are booked. So he started so many excuses. My tickets are booked. No, it's okay, we can cancel. No, I have to go back. I have GBC responsibilities. No problem. I take away all your responsibilities from GBC now. You serve here. Prabhupada, the weather is bad here. No, you stay in India. That's how you'll get used to the weather. Prabhupada, I can't agree with the food. The food don't agree with me. Don't worry, this food is good on this side of India. So every excuse he made, Prabhupada countered it. Anything else? No, Prabhupada. Okay, so it's sorted out. You stay here and you help Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And he was like, he first pulled out all the defense mechanism, then he addressed it and said, if my Guru Maharaj wants it, I'll do it. And then he did it. And gloriously. You see, even Tejas Prabhu, they were coming in the train with Prabhupada, and this one man said, why don't you start a center here in Delhi? And he said, will you help? Yes, I'll try and help. Okay. So he said, Tejas Prabhu, you jump off with this man at the next stop. And he knew nothing. He didn't know Hindi. He didn't know where he was going, who was a stranger. But this is the kind of devotees we have. They just completely sold out from the level of the soul to Prabhupada and Krishna, and therefore they've achieved such greatness today. So the sutra goes on to say here, are we willing to trust Krishna when what he ordains is different than our own desires? Are we willing to, like these devotees did? It goes on to say, are we willing to offer him our plans? Because as devotees, we have our plans. And usually after when we get senior and we get big positions, now we can implement what that fellow didn't do those years. Now I'll show everybody. And we start to climb the hierarchy of seniority and service. We need to get to temple commander, then temple president, then GBC. Then where does it stop? You'll go all the way to try to take Krishna's position. Because the false ego is not being addressed. In and itself, these services are meant for purification. But we have to address the false ego and self-centeredness, as today's sutra is saying. Even those to offer him our plans, even those for service. What's our plans for service? Because many times we first try to create a comfort zone. Make sure we're getting the Maha plate, make sure we got a big office, make sure it's air conditioned, make sure everybody offers Dandavat when they come in. And then that we now, head of society, head of things, HOD, head of the departments. But what are we doing for our spiritual growth? Is it actually pratikul or anukul? Anukulyena sankalpa, praticulyena varjanam, rakshasi iti vishvaso gotruptem varanam tata. That we have to accept that which is favorable and reject that which is unfavorable. So these are difficult processes, but if nobody reminds us of it, if we're not aware of it, how then do we progress to address it? We will just go on through the years without it ever being addressed, always thinking the problem is outside. The problem is there with all these devotees, not realizing that I'm also on a process of purification and I also need to reach those pure states of Krishna consciousness. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today's class. Please join us again tomorrow. Hare Krishna.